We're going to be covering a few points today, but before that, I want to share with you a number of sources of information that you can look up if you want to explore more. Getting Things Done is an old book by David Allen. It will give you a lot of insights which are still very much valid today on how to organize your life and manage things in a very methodical manner. It's a very big book, and today I'm going to use a number of insights from that book in the way I have used this at Google and in other projects. Marie Kondo's book is a very well-known book also. It's a bestseller. Maybe some of you have heard about this. I'll be sharing just a few tips on the magic of tidying up. It may sound very boring, but actually there's a lot of value to be extracted from this. How Google works. This is from the previous CEO of Google. And he has explained in many very practical ways how Google, how the company I work for today and the company I've been working for 12 years is working in minute details. There's a number of things that you see also below, a number of websites that I'm going to go through today because these are very useful, but they're just examples of how you can automate things. So by all means, you're not restricted to this, but these are the ones that I recommend because I've been using them and recommending them to others and teaching others on how to use those. And finally, because I have interviewed a lot of people to join Google, I've given about just shy of 300 interviews to hire project managers at Google. I'm a senior program manager myself at Google, so I have very good insights. It turns out I'm also on the hiring committee at Google to hire project managers. So I'm going to give you a very small flavor of the interview process at Google and what we seek in project managers. And the reason I'm going to do this is because this will give you very good insights as to what we expect from a very good organized project manager. And I believe, and maybe I'm a little bit arrogant on this, but if you're good enough to join Google, you're probably good enough to join most companies around the planet. So forgive the arrogance, but I want to share with you these tips that are not much publicly available online. So I'm going to give you a few insights about this. 3 topics today, 3 main sections. And watch out, they're going to be very, very detailed. There's a lot of content. The first topic is the techniques to get and stay organized. Then we'll go to the basics of project management. This is where I'm going to share with you some details about the interview process. And finally, the technical part of this presentation on how to automate things. Does this look like your desk? It's possible, right? Whether your desk at home, whether your desk at the office. Here's the thing. How would you feel if you had this desk instead? Now, granted, I've taken these images from the internet. This is not my desk. And the point here is, if you don't have a clean desk, a clean way of organizing your area, probably your mind is not very clear on how you want to structure your projects, on how you want to structure things. So the very first thing, it may sound so silly, but take the time to tidy up your space, tidy up your things. And this is why this book can be quite insightful on how to do this. Do a complete purge, get rid of everything you don't need, and tidy in full once, not just in small increments. Otherwise, you'll get the impression of never being done with tidying up. And tidy by categories. Once you start tidying up your clothes or your papers, do all the clothes at once. Then go to all the books that you have and all the papers and all the electronics and gadgets that you have around you. And then store things carefully. Just surround yourself with the things you actually need or the things that you actually love. Now, it may sound simple, but taking the time to do this will make you feel so much better in most cases. This is just a psychological thing based on research, so try it. This is the first tip I can give you. Tidy up your life, tidy up the things that you own and the things that are around you. To-do lists. I love to-do lists. I used to write them on paper a lot, and I'm going to show you how I've evolved to something electronic. But here's the key insight. Jot down, and I encourage you to do this today after this session. Jot down the 20 things you really want to do in life. 20 things. I'm sure you can come up with 20 things. Let's say I want to become a professional skateboarder. In case you're not aware, for those in Jakarta, I skateboard even in the streets of Jakarta. Yes, it's true. Now, the most important step is the next one, is to prioritize, to make sure that you have a good list of what is the top thing, number 1, and then number 2, then number 3, all the way to 20. And finally, even more important than everything else, because all this may sound obvious to you, right? But maybe the last bit here will be the least obvious of all. Keep the top 5, just the top 5 things that you have out of 20, and everything you have in the remaining 15, this is what you will never do. You'll put this in the not do list. Why? because you'll never have the time. If you get 20 things, chances are you're going to do a little bit of everything. You're not being able to stick to the top 5, and you'll be disappointed. You will not feel fulfilled because you've had too many things on your to-do list. So my recommendation to you here is, once you've been very honest with yourself, what are the 20 things that you really want to achieve? Just pick the top 5, and all the rest, force yourself to never do them. Now, there's one caveat, one asterisk to what I just said. If you did complete the top 5, then why not? Then pick another 5 if you want. Or if you completed 4, you can always add one more. So you have 5 that you're going to focus on. But chances are that if you have 5 meaningful projects, let's say becoming a professional skateboarder, becoming a great project manager, finally learning, this music piece on the piano, or whatever it is, chances are that 5 will be more than enough to get you busy for the next few years. So be very ruthless with yourself. Otherwise, you'll never be able to achieve anything. So this is part of being organized. Here's an example. This is a real example of what I do in my Google Keep notes. You can use Evernote. You can have any note system that you have. And you can see here, these are all the categories that I put my post-it notes, my electronic post-it notes. I got things about art, things I like to write, things I like to read, things I like to watch at the cinema. I got things about money and my CV and jobs. I got projects. You can see here, 10x MBA is one of my projects. There's another one here, To Debate, which is a debating podcast. Some of you have heard me talk about this previously. There is Obsentia, which is a YouTube channel, which I'm trying to create out of drone videos. I'll talk more about this in just a few minutes. When we'll talk about automating, you'll see an example. But you can see here, I've got everything in terms of specific to-do lists by categories. You may notice actually here on the screen, I have something called to-do lists. Now the reason I have this is for that reason. Here's the next slide. I create every single day of the year, I create a post-it note with the day of the day today and what I plan to do on the actual day. And if I don't complete it, I pass it on to the next day. And I try to have this in an electronic format because as you can see, depending on the day, I'll be more or less productive. And the reason I do this electronically is because in the past, I used to have paper notes, emails, Google Keep notes, Evernote, what have you, and it was just scattered around in many different systems. Just use one system. It can be pen and paper, but the additional benefit of doing this online with this tool, for instance, is that you can use your laptop, you can use your phone, you can print it, and also you can make statistics. Look here. On Monday, 3rd of September, that was just 3 weeks ago, I only did 5 things on that day. Right, that were worth mentioning on that to-do list. And the day before, on the Sunday, I did 15 things. So here's the thing. What I'm planning to do is extract statistics out of this. So I have a sense of the average. How many things can I manage in a single day? On average, it's probably around 10. Right? So I know that if I add more than 10 things in a single day, it's very unlikely I'll be able to complete them. So be very honest with yourself. And it's okay if it's only 3 things. It's perfectly fine. Just know where your limit is. Just know your capability. This is a way to get practically organized with to-do lists, which I'm sure you've heard of many, many times, and I'm sure most of you are using. How often do you see documents around you from colleagues or the documents maybe you create which lack in proper formatting? They don't look nice, right? They're really ugly. And it's a shame because now you got templates. Now I'm showing to you right here the example of the template gallery on Google Documents. This is accessible to everyone. If you're using Microsoft Word, you know that templates exist. It's exactly the same thing. So don't hesitate. Use template documents because they look nice. If you don't have the time to organize your documents, you can use these templates. And the same for spreadsheets. You got very nice looking spreadsheets out there. Same for presentations. Use what exists. Don't be shy. It's okay if it looks exactly like millions of other presentations. At least it will look very clean and structured. So if you don't have the time to create your own design, don't hesitate. Copy what exists out there or use free templates that you can find on the internet. So I'm going to talk about email. Some of you may have seen this slide in one of my previous presentations. I'm just going to show that one slide about getting to inbox 0. What does inbox 0 mean? It means trying to get to the objective of having no emails left in your inbox by the end of the day. Why do this? It's exactly like the first image I showed you today. A clean desk, a clean inbox, a clean to-do list. If things are clean around you, chances are your brain is going to be very clear on what you want to do next, whether it's your personal life or your professional life. I make no distinction. So let's talk about how you can do this with your email. Once you get an email, ask yourself the question, is your action required? If the answer is no, then are you waiting for someone else to follow up on that email? If the answer is no again, ask yourself the question, is it interesting? Is that email interesting? And if it's no, well, it's simple. Just delete it. Archive that email or mute the email thread. It's not interesting. Nobody cares. And you're not waiting for anyone else. Let's go back one step upwards on that decision tree. If it's interesting, well, don't hesitate to share it with someone else. Forward it to a colleague, to a friend. Chances are, if you find it interesting, it's also interesting for someone else that you know. Let's go back one step and imagine that in this case, you're actually waiting for someone else. Your action is still not required, but you're waiting for someone else to act on that email. In this case, add yourself a reminder, maybe use a second calendar, or put this in a specific folder to follow up with that person after a certain amount of time. And you'll see, and something that I will display in the third section of this presentation, on how you can also automate this part, so you don't have to send a manual reminder and still make it customized. Let's go back one step. Is your action required? If the answer is yes, in this case, you have to ask yourself the question whether you can act on this email within X minutes. Now, what is X here? X is your number. X is the amount of time that you know you will not be distracted if you spend that amount of time. Let's say it's 2 minutes, right? You can spend 2 minutes without checking your phone, without checking Facebook or Instagram, and you'll actually be able to focus. If it's 2 minutes, that's perfectly fine. If it's 30 seconds, it's fine too. You define, but just be honest with yourself. If it's more than 30 seconds or 2 minutes, then leave it for later. Leave it for when you will be able to focus and disconnect from Facebook and Instagram and really focus for an hour and a half, and you just deal with all your emails. And if you can do it within 2 minutes or 30 seconds, then just do it now. Whether it's delegating, doing the actual work because it requires less than X minutes, or share it. So this is how to get organized, and I'm very quick here because this is a presentation, this is not a hands-on workshop, but try to implement this. Try this decision tree. You will see that if you apply this to any message you receive, whether it's instant messages, whether it's emails, you'll be much more efficient and organized. Here's one thing I use at Google. This is a real spreadsheet I've defined at Google. And I will show you again, stay tuned. This is part 1 of my presentation today. But in part 3, you will see how a lot of this is actually automated. This is what I call an action item tracker. You can see here in the second column that you have the date when I added the action item. The owner of the action item is in the third column. The description is the action item itself, and then you have a deadline and the priority level, whether it's complete or ongoing. So this is what I use with my team and different colleagues at work to make sure I keep track of everything that is going on in my team in terms of practical work, and I want to follow up. So I put everything in a spreadsheet. It can be Excel if you prefer Microsoft Excel. It can be a Google spreadsheet. I won't go into the details here, but this is how I've defined the legend of that spreadsheet. If you're interested in reusing this, just don't hesitate to email us. I'll give you a copy, a template of that action item tracker, because I found this very useful. In the status, this is a drop-down list, right? You can go into not started, in progress, and complete for an action item. So all this allows me to track the action items. So in summary of this first presentation, of this first part of the presentation, tidy up your desk, tidy up your home, tidy up your room, whatever you have, so that you have a very clear and clean environment in which you evolve. Prioritize the to-do list. Make sure you focus on the top 3, top 5, whatever you can focus in a single day or over the next few months. Use templates. Make sure your documents are very structured, are very, very clear and clean. Don't hesitate to reuse what others have already created if you don't have the time. Don't waste your time if you're not a pro in design. Try to get to inbox 0. If you're responsive, and this was the point of another presentation, if you're responsive to email and messages, people will involve you in decisions. People will involve you in projects. The reason why Marina, Vibavi, and Pera are working with me on this project is because they're extremely responsive. Like, they have never met in person. This is extraordinary. They've never met in person. I know each of them, but they've never met, and they're capable of working together, and they're extremely responsive. And finally, track action items. How often do I have my team members or colleagues, even at Google, who are not good enough in terms of tracking what they have to do? Don't be that person. Be better than them. Be better than most of the people at Google. Organize your action items. Put everything in a spreadsheet. Let's talk about the basics of project management. After you're organized and you're very clear on what you're set to do, let's talk about the 3 key skills that I and Google look for when we hire project managers or program managers. And by the way, I believe these skills are mandatory whatever the kind of work you do. You're an engineer, you work in the marketing department, you will have projects, you will have to be organized. Here are the 3 things, and I'm going to go into some details around this. The first part is cognitive ability, your ability to think, to solve complex problems. The second piece is leadership. This is not about management. You don't have to manage people to be a leader. And the third piece is culture fit. A lot of companies hire for what they call cultural fit or team fit. And unfortunately, in many companies, this is very subjective. So today I'm going to talk about specific objective criteria that you can look for and that you can also develop yourself if you want to become a stronger project manager. Cognitive ability. 3 aspects specifically that we look for in this aspect. How well do you understand problems? And one of the questions I ask at Google when I have candidates for interviews, I ask them, well, what are the challenges you can think of? If you had the role tomorrow, you start at Google, what are all the challenges you can think of? Be exhaustive. And then I ask them, pick one of those challenges and tell me, how are you going to find solutions? How are you going to tackle that problem? And all of this, I want to also test them on their ability to communicate very clearly in a structured fashion. Can they summarize what they've expressed to me? If they're a bit lengthy in their explanation, can they be very clear in their communication? So it may sound obvious to you here, but very few people know actually what we expect at Google. Well, I do make it clear during the interview, but these are the things that we do look for in candidates because this is what we assess project managers on afterwards when they join Google. Here's an example, and I'll go slightly more into detail on clear communication. What does that mean? It means being structured. What does structured mean, for instance? It means, and you can see this in my presentation here, you can see how I go through number 1, cognitive ability, number 2, leadership, number 3, cultural fit. This is being structured. That's an obvious example using numbers. It's also using the right amount of detail and examples, not too much, not too few. Be concise and not too wordy. And you're not expecting the interviewer to keep on probing, to keep asking you for follow-up questions because you've not been clear enough. Here's what it means to be a leader, among other things. It means the ability to get things done, including, as Pera was asking in a specific scenario where, how do you get others to be also organized? Your ability to work as a team is a sign of your leadership skill. And this is not easy. Are you also striving for self-development? And I have to say thank you and congratulations for all of you who are here today, because if you're here today, it means you know that you want to improve your skills. And I have to applaud you because it's very difficult to admit that we still have areas where we can improve. So thank you for being humble enough and joining the session today. This is a sign of leadership. So you can be proud of yourself to be just in this presentation today because you made the time and you took the trouble to listen and tune in today. Let me give you an example of what it means to work as a team. I'm not going into all the details. It means, for instance, helping your colleagues to attain the common objectives. People are surprised when they join Google how even if you're part of a team, people from other teams will help you achieve your goals for your team. We have a very collaborative nature within the company. Sharing information, don't keep the information to yourself, and try to enhance the strengths of other team members around you. You're here to work all together, not to try and make sure that you're more smart or more intelligent than the next person. No, you're all together in the same team or the same company. Culture fit. I mentioned to you that you have to stay away from being subjective here. Let's be as objective as possible. What does that mean? It means trying to thrive in ambiguity. What does thriving mean? It means that if the problem is not clear, then you manage to find clarifications. Either you ask for it or you make assumptions. You make hypotheses on what could make the problem clearer. Another area, valuing feedback. Now this is interesting. How do I measure whether someone values feedback in an interview? Well, guess what? If they listen carefully to my questions And sometimes I will give them hints. If they react positively to these hints, if they take advantage of my hints, then I score them highly on this aspect of value and feedback. That means they paid attention to what I said and they valued the guidance I gave them for them to answer more carefully about the question I was asking originally. So this is how you can very easily test for people's ability to value feedback. Do they have the ability to challenge the status quo? It's not because things have been done the same way all the time that they have to be done always the same way every time afterwards. For instance, today, we're doing this presentation online, right? It's quite rare, to be honest, to have leadership, project management, superhuman training online. Most people are used to an in-person, face-to-face training, and maybe this is what we'll need to do for 10x MBA to raise the awareness. But the fact that you're here today is you're ready to go through a kind of a modern way, at least in the past 5-10 years, of education and training, of doing things online and interacting via shared documents. Putting the user first. Do you care about the user, the customer, your colleagues? And in fact, this is a link to the last point here about this objective criterion, and that's caring about the team. This is also what we call about culture fit. Let me give you an example specifically about putting the user first. What does that mean? It means, among other things, do you anticipate the concerns of the user? Do you foresee what kind of problems they would have? Do you address those issues? Do you actually answer the issues that the user would have? And finally, do you customize your answers? Is it just, a boilerplate answer? Or do you try to customize and adapt a little bit your offering to what the customer needs? Okay, so this section is going to be a little bit more technical, so stay with me. You don't need to know how to code, and I will try and encourage you to learn a little bit about it. We won't have the time to go through everything, but hopefully you'll get inspired enough to want to discover more afterwards. So again, if there's anything you've learned today in the first two sections, is my hope here is for you to just get started with one thing. Right? Maybe you'll notice, okay, I'm going to tidy up my desk. I'm going to deal with my emails. I'm going to think more about what it means to be a leader in terms of helping my colleagues and working as a team. So hopefully there's one thing. Now today, in this third part, is how to automate things. This is in the same vein of trying to be even more organized, and I have to admit, the real secret is to have clones. Maybe some of you will remember the film Matrix. So that's how I usually try to make people laugh. I tell them I have multiple clones, and for them to know which clone number is currently talking to them, they have to look behind my neck. So currently speaking to you is Sebastian clone 393. All the previous ones are retired, living on a beach in Bali, trying to, they've just been overused and overworked. Seriously, what can you do if you don't have clones? Because they can be expensive to maintain. Here, I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about two things today, mainly. One is a website called ifttt.com. Why ifttt? It simply means if this, then that. If ttt. If this, then that. And this requires no coding whatsoever. The great thing about this website is it allows you to talk to your applications to work with one another. I'll give you a few examples on the next slide. For instance, you can see here, maybe the second one here, back up the photos automatically and the photos that you're tagged into Facebook to an iOS photo album, right? And you can see that 120,000 people have used this. It's free. All these applets are free. It's not maintained by Google. It's not maintained by me. But I found this quite useful in some occasions to automate some of the things I want to automate in a very straightforward manner, and it requires no coding whatsoever. So I encourage you to go to the website and see this directly. Here are a few examples of productivity applets. Like for instance, let's look at the one that you have in green here at the bottom of the slide. Whenever you add a new Google contact, mark it in your Google Calendar. This will be done automatically. You just have to turn this switch on, connect it to your Google account, and we'll do this automatically. Look at the one on the right-hand side in the middle section. Save every new email attachment from Gmail to Google Drive. Right? You may find this useful or not useful. They exist for a different range of products. And I just want to mention this to you because this requires no coding. It's a first step into what I'm going to talk right afterwards. Here's what I'm going to talk about in terms of coding. Don't expect to be an expert in coding after just a few hours. When you first see code, I'm going to show you a little bit of code. It may not make sense. You'll need to do a lot of searching on the internet and expect to learn, right? In this next few minutes, you'll be learning a lot. So put your seatbelt on. And if you want to get good at this, you need to make the time for it. But even if you don't want to make the time for it, you'll be able to just email us and I'll give you the code, which is, you will see, not that difficult to reuse directly without even understanding it. All right, I'm going to talk about AppScript. So for those who have not heard about Google AppScript, this is a coding language. It's based on JavaScript. So if you already know some JavaScript, this is going to be very easy. If you don't know JavaScript, don't worry. There's nothing to install and the code editor is directly in your browser. And if you don't use Google products, if you don't use AppScript, don't despair, don't be worried. If you're not using this in your company, if you're not using this in your personal life, all the skills you can learn here are most often transferable to other equivalent services. I used to be an expert in Excel VBA. So if you use Microsoft products, you can do not exactly the same thing. I don't think it's as powerful as what AppScript can do, but it's very, very similar. So don't worry, everything you see here today, you can probably transfer it to whatever tool you're using at work or at home. I'm just going to talk about AppScript because this is what I feel the most familiar with, and you can use the free version. It's completely free, and you can use this at least in your personal life. All right, if you don't know JavaScript, now I have had 3 people at Google who have only business backgrounds, no coding experience. They have managed to become better than me in JavaScript after I recommended for them to teach themselves JavaScript by going first to codeacademy.com. It's not maintained by Google, it's a separate company, which helps you to learn JavaScript step by step. It's very, very simple and it really guides you step by step. It will take you a few hours to learn JavaScript, but it's worth it because once you understand this, you understand the basics of any programming language. If you've never coded, you will finally understand what coding is all about, and it's not as hard as you think. It is difficult to create an Android app, yes, but to be able to learn the basics of coding will not require that much time. The next step after going through the first few lessons, you don't need to go through all the lessons in Code Academy for JavaScript. The next step is to learn by examples. So today I'm going to show you a number of examples and I'll give you the code for those who are interested. And if you're not interested in coding, don't worry. You can just copy paste the code. It will work directly with your spreadsheets and your documents if you feel that they're useful to you. I'll show you examples. Now, what can AppScript do? You wonder. There's many, many things. So many things I had to create 2 slides just to give you examples of everything I can think of what AppScript can do. It can add custom menus. You know there's menus at the top where it says File, Edit, Tools, Help. You can add new menus saying Sebastian's menu, and you can create new functions into Google Docs, into Google Spreadsheets, in Google Forms. You can do whatever you want. You can write custom functions. You're not happy with a function or it becomes too big. You probably use this in Excel, same way. You can create a simplified function to make it easier to use. You can publish web apps. This is incredible because with just a few lines of code, you can create web applications that are either standalone, so sitting at their own domain name. You can purchase a .com domain or within a Google site. You can interact with other Google services. This is why I think it's so powerful. I will show you how to interact with Google Maps within a spreadsheet, how to interact with YouTube within a spreadsheet and get data if it's useful for your work or your personal life. You can build add-ons to extend the power of these various tools. You can publish this also to the store. You can also convert an Android app so it exchanges data with a Google spreadsheet. Part 2, what else can you do? You can automate, and this is what interests me the most today, the tracking of work that is being done with your team or even just your work in a spreadsheet. As I mentioned, you can also automatically save email attachments into Google Drive. If you don't want to use ifttt.com, well, you can also code it yourself. You don't have to rely on any external service. You can automate data validation. You can turn a spreadsheet into a ticket system, whether it's to track bugs, whether it's to track what the work is going on about. You can create a web user interface for people to add data so that people who enter this data are not going to make errors instead of just giving them a spreadsheet and they will add data into that spreadsheet. You can automatically regenerate reports and so on and so on. There's just so many things you can do. Now, the best thing here about the additional best thing after connecting with different web services like Google Maps, like YouTube, is that you can use triggers. Now you can use different types of triggers, but I'm going to talk about a few of them here. One thing, what is a trigger? A trigger means, like, let's say someone does something in a document in a specific cell of the spreadsheet. If they do something in that cell, you can set up a trigger so that as soon as they change the content of that cell, some part of your code will get started and execute something else. Or it can be based on the time, right? Let's say every day you want to send a summary to your boss, or every week to your boss, about all the action items which were completed. You can completely automate it. Now, you have to keep the secret to yourself because my team does not know that a lot of my emails are completely automated. I'll explain to you how. Because they're so customized, they have no idea it's actually my clones, my code, which is sending all these emails, because they're time-based, because they're depending on whether someone has opened a document, whether they have added something in a specific cell. All right, show me the money. You want to show real demos? I'm going to show you real demos of what you can do with AppScript. And you can simply copy and paste these codes in your spreadsheet or your documents to make them work. All right, the first example, I'm going to switch to a spreadsheet, to the live demo. All right, so I'm in a spreadsheet here. I've coded this myself, and I'll take you through the code in just a second. But basically, I'm going to search for a number of terms here. And let's say I'm going to search for Jakarta drone video. Right? This is going to be my search in YouTube, but I want to have here, directly in my spreadsheet, a thumbnail of the YouTube video, the title of the YouTube video, and a link to that YouTube video. Directly in my spreadsheet. I'm not going to YouTube, and I can change whatever I type here, right? So I just typed Jakarta drone video, and I'm going to use this button that I created. I'm going to click on run, and hopefully, if the demo gods are with me, hang on, here we go. Now, if you go to YouTube, in theory, this is what you should be seeing. And by the way, this is one of my videos. If I go to YouTube, I'm going to go and open YouTube and search for Jakarta drone video. And as you can see, it's exactly the same results, right? There's nothing different here because this is connecting to the YouTube API. Let me ask you, although you can't answer the question right now, how many lines of code do you think are required to do this? 1 line, 10 lines, 50 lines, 100 lines of code, or just ask the Google Assistant to code things for you? Now, I can't hear you answer because this is a YouTube live session. And the answer is 10 lines. It's only 10 lines of code to be able to do this. And if you don't want to code, you can just copy and paste this code. This is what I've coded using the YouTube API and Google Spreadsheet. Let me go to sending customized emails, which I had mentioned, I think, in a previous presentation. Why send customized emails? It's not about just impressing your boss or your colleague or your lover or your mom or whatever it is. The point of doing this is here. What's the expected response rate? And Para, maybe you will relate to this, of an email sent to a group of people. You have a group of people who are supposed to do something and they're not doing it. And usually, here's what happens. This is based on stats I have compiled on thousands of emails I have sent. On average, 30% only of the people who get an email which are sent to a group respond. They don't feel encouraged to do and work on that action item because they think, oh, someone else will actually do the work for me. Or if I don't respond, nobody else, is encouraged to actually respond. So the reason why I encourage people to actually send a custom email, here's an example of me sending a custom email where I try to customize. I say, hello, Marcus, as a follow-up, or as I mentioned in my previous email, please update and do this work that you're asked to do here in the presentation. And immediately, this person is compelled to reply. The response rate goes from 30% to 80% because it's customized to them. And all this, I did not take the trouble to write. This is what happens. I'll show you in a few seconds. But how many lines of code do you think are required to be able to customize this? To be able to send this email to 50 different people, and it says, hello, Marcus, hello, Para, and everything here in the inside of the email is personalized. It's directly what they have to do. How many lines of code do you think? 1 line, 10 lines, 50 lines, 100 lines of code, or just ask Sebastian me to do it for you. By the way, last option is a joke, so don't answer E, please. I have enough work to do, even if I automate things. The answer is 10 lines again. It's only 10 lines of code. I would put the email address, so this is just like my email addresses, but you could have para@10xmbia.com. Let's say you'd have Marina. There are all the people who need to do something, all right? and I'm going to put their name here, para, because obviously the machine, the computer cannot guess. And I'm going to say, all right, Masterclass, and you need to do, I don't know, the content, and here's the link, and the email status if the email is sent, right? And Marina, you'll have to do something for the Masterclass, which is, I don't know, the survey creation, right? And I'm going to code everything, same thing. I'm going to go in my code, tools, script editor, and I'm going to get the values directly in the spreadsheet. Again, don't worry. As I told you at the beginning, it may look like gibberish. It may not make sense to you, but that's not the point. The point is, I want to show you how you can do this in a very easy fashion. Right? This is only 10 lines of code. You can do this. Here's one more thing you can do, connecting different services together. Updating the calendar from spreadsheets. Why do this? As you may have realized, especially when you're at work, sometimes it's very tiring and boring to update a calendar or a spreadsheet based on all the meetings you have in a calendar. Imagine you're organizing a conference and there's maybe 10 sessions in the during the conference, during the day, and you want to put a reminder for speakers to show up on stage, and you want to have some, I don't know, party time after the conference ends, and what have you. And you have multiple tracks and multiple different sessions running in parallel. So you have a spreadsheet which has, you have a calendar which has so many different meetings. You can see here on the right-hand side. And it gets very messy to organize, especially if you want to move things around, if you want to change the timings because things have changed the last minute. So what I would do, I would put everything in a spreadsheet, every meeting in my spreadsheet, and then I would click on one button and it will put everything into the calendar. Right? So this is what it would look like. I would have this in my spreadsheet because this is way easier on the left-hand side to automate, to actually write down, the date, the time, and put, the location where and what's happening, and then automatically it would put everything in my calendar. And in one click, if I need to change things, it will change the calendar afterwards. So I don't know if Microsoft allows to do this with Microsoft Calendar and Outlook and Microsoft Excel. Probably it does, but it does certainly work with spreadsheets and calendar. Same thing here. It's just a few lines of code, and I can share the code with you. I've coded it. I own the right of the code, so you can use that if you want to use it. This is just to make things much easier. Centralizing action items. Why do this? We talked about getting organized. And when you have too many action items in too many different documents, let me try to show you this. It's a live demo. You're going to have many documents. Let's say you have Word documents or Google documents in this case with many action items. And you want to centralize everything. You want to centralize everything into a single spreadsheet. Remember when I showed you the spreadsheet with the screenshot you can see on the right? Remember, you had the owner, the date added, the action item, the due date. Well, guess what? I'm automating everything from documents, and they're added to the spreadsheet. Let me show you a live demo. We're talking about work, and we're taking notes in the meeting, blah blah blah. And suddenly we know it's a time for action items. Woohoo! And here you're gonna have like an action item. You're gonna write AI. Because this is going to be the code. The code is going to detect AI, action item, right? This is why we have the action items up here. And I'm going to say, okay, Sebastian, what do you have to do next? It's going to be, let me see, what was the format already? It's going to, we put the due date, let's say before the 1st of October. It's going to be priority 1. And Sebastian, you will have to answer all the questions from the masterclass that we didn't have the time to answer live. All right. We'll have an action item for para, maybe by tomorrow. P1 or P2, less urgent. Send the feedback form to participants. All right. So next, what we do here, script editor somewhere. Here it is. All right. So I put some code already. Find AIs, find the action items in this document, and send them to my centralized action item tracker. Now you don't have to go there every time. You can set up a trigger. I'm going to run it manually. Let me press play. Hopefully it will work. It's running, and here we go. Look at this. You have the link to the original document. You have the date when it was added, just now. This is my local time. The owner, you have the action item. Answer all the questions from Masterclass. This is my action item, the due date, the priority, and the number of days left, right? You can see I've coded all this. And the status, it's not started, right? It has captured all the action items here from this document. And you can do this from any number of documents. Here, I have another action item. I can do the exact same thing. I'm going to run the script here manually. Now imagine you can do this and send a report to your boss every single day, every single week. You would not even have to think about it. You're just typing things in a document. It will just send the email automatically. You run it. All right. And you can see this is yet another document with action items. You can see this is the title of this document. Yet another document with action items. Captured here. I can open it very quickly. And Mark has an action item. Same thing, right? And the deadline was the 23rd of May, so it's completely missed. All right, let me go back to my presentation. But this is the practical thing where you can get organized and then decide to send a summary, let's say, of all this in column D to your boss or a colleague automatically. Imagine. And they will never know or not realize that you've actually automated all this. So have a wonderful evening, a good rest of your day for others in other time zones. Thank you.